Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is I, the one and only Maxi here once again, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you our final Let's Play of 2023. As promised you guys, we're going to be tackling through the game that's based off from Winnie the Pooh. Specifically, Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure. First came out in 2005 for the Nintendo GameCube and PlayStation 2, and the Game Boy Advance as well. And as you can tell, just like the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, I'm obviously going to be playing the PlayStation 2 version, so considering about the fact that you might actually be a little bit more familiar with those, PlayStation control buttons. So as you can tell, about the fact the matter is though, I get the strong sense of feeling that this entire game kind of plays out like Piglet's Big Game, except the fact that it's going to be a little bit more downgraded this time, especially concerning about the fact that, well, I'll explain more details about this as soon as we get the game started, and yeah, I'm actually really excited about this, especially we're getting very close towards the very end of 2023, and before we get on to 2024, so yeah, it'll be exciting.
One day, in the 100-acre wood, Winnie the Pooh was going for a quiet walk with his good friend Christopher Robin.
Oh, bother. There's a rumbly in my tumbly.
You're always hungry, Pooh Bear. I know. Why don't you try thinking of something besides your tummy?
That's a very good idea, Christopher Robin. Now, I wonder what else I could think about.
Well, you could remember some of your favourite times.
Oh, yes. Now, think. Well, I think my favorite times are always the friendliest times. And birthday parties are very friendly indeed.
And so, to forget his hunger, Winnie the Pooh decided to remember a few birthday parties by looking at his friends' birthday scrapbooks.
And yeah, that's how the plot usually begins in terms of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure. And that is about the fact that it involves around with, obviously Winnie the Pooh's having a nice chat with Christopher Robin, of course. And because of that, though, I think that's as far as I can try to explain about the whole plot so far. Mind you, about the fact that this is actually my first time experiencing Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure on the console version because, well, I'll explain more details about that once we're able to get the game started. And also, as you can tell, that menu looks a bit familiar, doesn't it?
You may continue your adventure from where you last left it.
So we got ourselves the load game right here, as well as that familiar friend Gopher. They behaves exactly like the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game for a new game.
Our good friend Gopher. When you want to start a new adventure, just speak to him.
So yeah, relatively speaking though, is that this particular spot looks very similar to Piglet's Big Game, except the biggest difference is this time is that the load game is now on the right instead of left, and Gopher is now located onto the left instead of right. So yeah, that's a little bit interesting for all that specific differences here. Even the actual menu HUDs, well, a little bit different. Although I will admit though right away that the actual font looks very similar to Piglet's Big Game. Except the noticeable differences this time is that obviously you take control of Winnie the Pooh, of course. And on top of all that stuff though, it does have a different developer as well as a different publisher. Now, as far as I'm aware, that this game has been published by Ubisoft, which is interesting, that, the same company who made Rayman, of all things. And on top of that, this game has also been developed by Phoenix Studio, which, yeah, that's interesting company choice, doesn't it? So, yeah, as you can see, we ended up in the main menu right here. Now, there's quite a few things to do around here, including with the forms of the mini-games, alongside with the options menu, which I'll show this off in a later time. And of course, there's actually a pram right there, which actually replicates the junior mode of any sorts. But obviously the main focus of this particular playthrough is that we're gonna go ahead and search for the scrapbook.
It's a wonderful way to remember your adventure.
So basically it's kind of like the equivalent to the actual telescope from the likes of Piglet's Big Game, although as soon as you're able to dive right into the scrapbook, much like the forms of Piglet's Big Game, you only start things off with 2 stages, or to be more specifically, two segments, or two birthdays rather. So you start things off with Piglet's birthday and Rue's dream. However though, as soon as you're able to complete most of those scrapbooks, then you move on to the next. And also as you can see, similar to the cookie system in Piglet's big game, basically we do need to collect honey pots, and that'll be important until specifically later on. So either way, so let's get to it with the first birthday of the lineup, and that's what appears to be Piglet's birthday. Now as far as I'm aware, there's only 5 levels this time as opposed to 7 stages. So either way though, and I'm pretty sure that unlike in Piglet's big game, that in each and every single stage does manage to take place in somewhat unique environments. Every stage all takes place in 100 Acre Wood, so nothing special I might add, but at least there might be some to get used to. So either way, so yeah, let's get started with the very first birthday in this entire game, and that's of course Piglet's birthday. So as be expected, we have to go for a lot of tutorials.
Now, to forget about being hungry, Winnie the Pooh remembered the birthday of one of his very dear friends.
Today is Piglet's birthday. I'd better go see if he needs help getting ready for his party.
Say there, Sonny. If you want to visit Piglet, it's gonna be a problem. Gotta open the gate first, you know. Personally, I'd use the key on the tree stump.
So yeah, let's get to it with Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly adventure. So obviously that this particular first stage obviously heavily utilizes the forms of the tutorial stuff, meaning that how you're able to actually control the game. And obviously, since that we're going to be taking control of Winnie the Pooh the majority of the game this time around, that relatively speaking that his entire gameplay style plays pretty similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's big game. However though, unlike in Piglet's big game, that this time Pooh now actually has a run button. Now I'm pretty sure in order able to, activate the run button is by simply pressing the square button on the PlayStation 2 version, and on the GameCube version you simply press the B button. So that'll be the obvious differences between these two versions right there. So in order able to actually get honey pots, as you can see, similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's big game, is that you need able to knock into some objects that it does felt a bit shakeable. However, this time around though, it actually gives you a hint that if you see those little flashing shiny effects on certain objects, that actually indicates there are some honey pots in there. And just like the cookies though, they managed to contain 5 of those objects. So yeah, nothing new from here I don't think. So let's just grab the key.
Oh,
Perfect! With that key, opening the gate will be simple.
Obviously, if you couldn't tell, the visual style looks very similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's big game. Although, except the fact that, relatively speaking, as I said before, each and every single birthday no longer takes place in a unique set pieces, unlike in Piglet's big game, for certain dreams. So anyway, so let's go ahead and open up this gate with usage of the key.
Spectacular! Now you better skedaddle on out of here and go see Piglet. Last time I saw him, he looked worried.
Now, if you couldn't tell already, it's about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, is the 26th of December today, in this case in 2023 today. Now, as I mentioned this before, we are getting very, very close towards the end of 2023, according to the forms of the actual calendar for what I've checked. And on top of that, we are getting very, very close to the beginning of 2024. So either way, though, I'll probably discuss on that in a later time. So for now, let's just go ahead and move on to the next area. So relatively speaking, I think relatively speaking is that Piglet's birthday is probably going to be one of the easier stages in the game, just because of getting used to with the tutorials, and you probably named the rest of it. So, and there's Kangaroo right here.
Why, hello, Pooh Bear. Are you going to visit Piglet today?
oh yes, as today is his birthday, I thought it would be the perfect day to pay him a birthday visit.
Oh, he'll be very happy to see you. But do be careful, dear. One of the boards is missing on the bridge to his house. It should be replaced.
So, unlike any forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, that I get the strong sense of feeling that this particular Let's Play of this game is going to be a lot shorter compared to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, at least as far as I'm aware, but I'm sure enough we're able to actually get used to it at one point.
That path's blocked. Gonna have to push this box out of the way if you want to get by.
So of course, just like in Piglet's Big Game, we need to once again just push those objects by simply just trying to able to actually just to, you know, shove the box over. But before I do that, I need to go ahead and find some shiny objects, or to be more specifically, that certain objects will be shakeable, so just to ensure that I would able to... Actually, I should probably save that until for later.
Superb! Now the path is clear as a whistle.
Yeah, I totally get that. And every time whenever you complete certain stuff, very similar to Piglet's Big Game, that basically you do able to have auto-saving once again. So, relatively speaking, I think that pretty much checks out from here. So, and I think that we might come across into also something familiar, except with one massive difference this time around. Assuming, of course, the loading times might felt a bit extremely lengthy.
Oh.
Say there, Sonny. That tummy of yours sure is making a lot of noise. The heffalumps will know just where you are. Better skedaddle away from them.
Oh, bother. I don't suppose you know how to frighten away a heffalump?
Course I do. I'm an expert. Just find a balloon and pop it. That's sure to make 'em run away.
So if you couldn't tell, in order able to actually scare off the heffalumps and wurzels this time, is that as you can tell, since that Pooh's tummy is once again rumbling, just like in Piglet's Big Game, but as you can see, there was actually a balloon over there, which this means we must able to actually get to that certain point with the balloon, and then you simply need to pop it, and that way you should probably scare off those heffalumps. And by the way, those heffalumps are in a different color. Wait a minute, I keep thinking about Piglet's Big Game for some reason, so, but either way, we'll scare off those heffalumps.
Superb, if I do say so myself. Now you can sightsee in peace. And don't forget, if those heffalumps come after you again, just find yourself a balloon and pop it.
Yeah, thank you. So, either way, in terms of, like, everything else I could probably discuss at this point, well, that was actually kind of the thing about the fact that this wasn't exactly the first ever version I actually played, Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly adventure back in the day, because, the very first version of the game I did somehow play a long time ago, which appears to be the Game Boy Advance version, which, by the way, the Game Boy Advance version plays out pretty much exactly the same as Piglet's Big Game, basically, so...
Hey, are those bees stopping you from passing by? Well, you've come to the right place. I've found just the way to make 'em ski-daddle. All you have to do is bring 'em the number of honey pots they're asking for.
Honey pots? I don't suppose you might know where I could find some honey pots, that is.
Certainly do. They're everywhere. Just look around. You're sure to find some.
Even though technically we've already did that since the very beginning of the level, and yeah, relatively speaking, I need to know how many honey pots I got so far. Oh, okay, we only got up to 30 so far. So, yeah, just like the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, in order able to continue your progressioning for the game, collecting honey pots is once again mandatory, just like cookies in some cases. However though, I will have to admit it though right away, that you don't necessarily need able to get all of those honey pots. Well, you do need to collect most of them until you're able to actually decide able to give certain honey pots to those bees, as you can tell. However, this is basically like the equivalent to the Brave-Faced Factory from the likes of Piglet's Big Game, except now you only deliver honey pots instead of using cookies. So, and I believe we need to use 10 of them.
Stupendous! all the bees have skedaddled. Next time they bother you, bring 'em some more of those honey pots.
Don't worry, I will, especially concerning that, of course, this will be a 100% completion after all, so either way. However though, this will be a lot more easier than the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game for sure, at least for some degree, so... Now I believe that pretty much leads us to the previous area. We can now able to actually just go ahead and find another one of those items we could pick up. So, of course, about the fact that, as I mentioned this before, that this particular stage is pretty short and easy, because obviously just getting used to with the main mechanics, and you probably named the suggestions. So, now of course, that particular loading screen, as I said before, looks very similar to Piglet's Big Game, except now, Pooh is actually walking back and forth between left and right. And the actual transition of the background is pretty much exactly identical to the ones in Piglet's Big Game, basically. Although nowadays, that you now see Pooh's face on a spinning disc icon, which is actually a pretty cool touch. And now we've actually got ourselves a wooden plank, so that means we can now able to proceed to the next progressioning here. And as you can see, we actually stumbled across into a new collectible, and that's what appears to be those music notes. However though, I think there are about 3 of these things, so naturally speaking though, if I do ever miss one of them, then let me know in the comments down below, because relatively speaking though, as I said before, this is my first time experiencing the console version of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure, because as I said before, I used to have the Game Boy Advance version long time ago, but I no longer have it, unfortunately, and similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, the Game Boy Advance version also utilizes the password system, so yeah, I'm not too crazy with the password feature or anything else to be more specific in my eyes, but either way, I think we actually collected every single honey pots in this particular area for right now.
Congratulations, Pooh. Now you can repair the bridge.
Okay, so I have to able to go back, but something tells me about the fact that, well, I don't think we can probably able to do that much, aside from the fact that now we can able to actually open up, you know what I mean, to the next area, or should I say the last section of Piglet's birthday, basically. So, relatively speaking, we can just, continue things on for this point. So, and relatively speaking though, is about the fact that obviously on the Game Boy Advance version of this game, does manage to give you a top-down perspective, similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game on the Game Boy Advance. Although the only major difference is this time is obviously that, well, the annoying thing about the Game Boy Advance version to me though, is that I feel like the music is a bit ear-grating to me though, because it loops for about 10 seconds or something like that, which I know for a fact it's been a very long time since I actually have last played the Game Boy Advance version, but I will still say that the console version is definitely the better pick of the two to me though. Well, I was expecting of such, so either way, now let's go ahead and place that particular wooden plank, so now we can able to walk across the bridge. Pretty simple and self-explanatory, basically. However, there's one key differences between the Piglet's Big Game compared to Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure, is that obviously, as you can tell, we can now only get one item inventory. So meaning about the fact that there's only one button you can able to utilize the item inventory space. Meaning that we only need to press the circle button, because as far as I'm aware, the square button allows Pooh to dash, and on top of that, the triangle button can now be able to actually access to the map, or you can essentially use the, I would say R1 button, I'm presuming so? Well, mind you, I didn't pay attention to the forms of those notifications, so, speaking of such, there's Piglet right here, although before we get to him, on the other hand, I need to grind for more honey pots before I can do anything, because, well, again, collecting honey pots is key here. However, there's another huge differences between Piglet's Big Game compared to Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure, because I'm pretty sure we've actually collected every single honey pots in this first stage in the game, because obviously the maximum you can get up to in this stage is 60 honey pots, so too easy and piece of cake at the same time.
Happy birthday, Piglet! Are you having a happy birthday so far?
I am. I would be. Except, you see, Pooh, I lost my broom. And now I can't sweep up for my birthday party.
Oh, don't worry, Piglet. I believe Kanga has a broom. I shall just go ask her if we may borrow it.
Oh, thank you, Pooh Bear.
So obviously, that we now need to backtrack for a bit. Yeah, just like in the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, there's going to be quite a few emphasis on backtracking. However, the biggest difference is between Piglet's Big Game compared to Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure is that certain segments have been blocked off due to the forms about the fact that there are certain areas we cannot actually access to yet. Although, relatively speaking, until the later stages to come, that basically though we can able to actually go in and actually access to certain areas. So, meaning about the fact that I get the strong sense of feeling that this game might actually felt a little bit linear compared to the forms of how it does it to its predecessor. And speaking of such though, we actually stumbled across those familiar colored heffalumps ever since in Piglet's Big Game, although the biggest difference is there is that obviously we can no longer do the battle sequences, because obviously something tells me that we will come across into that familiar gameplay style until for later. So either way, because chances are though, this is just the first stage in the game, and I think something tells me about the fact the matter is though, is that, well, I'll explain more now in a moment.
Oh, Kanga, could I possibly borrow your broom? I'm afraid that Piglet has misplaced his.
Well, I'm still doing my housework, Pooh, but I'll give it to you just as soon as I'm done. While I finish up, would you be a dear and go look for Roo? It's time for his snack.
Well, I'd be happy to, Kanga. Now, where is he?
I believe he's playing in front of your house.
So of course it's not too far from Pooh's house, I don't think. And I think, relatively speaking, is that in order able to save your game this time around, well, aside from auto-saving, if you do have your memory card with you, that basically, in order able to save your progression into your game, is that you need to able to go in front of Pooh's house, and that way you can able to save your game. Unlike in Piglet's Big Game, that you come across into that particular book, which actually allows you to save your game. So, relatively speaking, I think for the majority of certain stages can go by a little bit quicker compared to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, because, you know, we've now got the run button, so...
Roo, I'm glad I found you. I was just visiting Kanga, and she said it's time for your snack.
But look, Pooh Bear, I've been trying to catch butterflies to bring to Piglet's birthday party, and I haven't caught any yet.
And I haven't been much of a help.
Well, perhaps Eeyore and I could try to catch the butterflies together.
Oh, would you please?
Well, I'll give it a try. Probably make a mistake, though.
I just know you can do it. Oh boy! We're gonna catch butterflies!
Every once in a while, we will come across into the forms of a different playable character, similar structure to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, that basically, do you remember about the fact that you can only play as 3 playable characters in Piglet's Big Game? That you can play as Pooh, Tigger, and most notably Piglet. In here though, not only do you able to take control of Pooh throughout the majority of the game, but eventually you will come across until you take control of Eeyore, despite the fact that Pooh is actually taking a ride on Eeyore. So basically in this particular section right here, is that we do need to catch every butterflies.
Oh, that was great! Look at all the butterflies I got! They can fly all around at Piglet's party! And now I can go home for my snack.
Guess I'll go look for some sticks to rebuild my house again.
I shall go with you, Roo. Perhaps Kanga has finished her housework.
So I believe we now need to go back into Kangaroo's house, so just to ensure that we will able to actually get ourselves the most important item for Piglet, so that'll be the actual broomstick, of course. So, but either way though, that's basically all there is to it though. But eventually though, much like in Piglet's Big Game, we will come across into that familiar annoying mechanic, which I wasn't really too fond of, But I'm sure about the fact that this game will be a lot more easier than the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game for sure. Mind you, there are some occasional frustrating moments here and there, specifically with those heffalumps and woolsels, but that again, we'll point that out.
Pooh dear, thank you for finding Roo. And I've just finished my housework, so you may take my broom now.
Thank you, Kanga. Oh, this will make Piglet very happy.
Of course he will. Especially now Winnie's able to return back to Piglet's house, and I think relatively speaking that'll be about it, right? Well, as it turns out, that you know about the fact that we technically already gave in those honey pots to those bees from earlier. Well, turns out about the fact the matter is though, not only do we have to come across to that most of the time throughout the majority of the game, and also something tells me is that unlike the actual cookies in Piglet's Big Game, that depending on what dream you go into, and the more you collect those cookies, you can able to actually carry them as much as you want. However, in this game though, every time whenever you move on to the next birthday or something like that, your honey pot count restarts to 0. Well, assuming of course about the fact that, well, I'll explain more details about that until possibly tomorrow, so... Because relatively speaking though, as I said before, that this game is going to be pretty short, especially concerning about the fact that, well, we can easily just manage able to complete this game just before 2024 rolls around. So, and relatively speaking, as I said this earlier, is that today's day is of course the 26th of December today, in this case in 2023 today, and relatively speaking though, happy Boxing Day everybody, after the events of a really good Christmas day. Oh god, Piglet has been surrounded by bees, and on top of that, some more heffalumps and woolsels apparently did show up. So, of course, we do need to able to pop the balloon in order to scare them off. So, because, yeah, similar to the forms of how it does it on Piglet's Big Game, if you ever dare get meet in contact with any heffalump or woolsels, basically though, if you get scared, basically though, you just essentially take a death or something. Well, not necessarily death, but you got frightened, basically, just like in Piglet's Big Game. So... And I believe in here we need to feed about 15 honey pots, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, thank you, Pooh Bear. I feel much better now. And when I have a broom, I just know I'll feel even better.
And speaking of which though, Piglet, here's your birthday gift, which is of course the actual broomstick if I press the circle button.
Here you are, Piglet.
Oh, a broom. How wonderful. Now I can sweep my house from top to bottom.
And I shall help you, Piglet. Then your house will be the perfect place to have the perfect birthday party.
And indeed, Pooh Bear remembered that Piglet's birthday party was one of the most perfect ever.
And just like in Piglet's Big Game, every time when if you complete the stage, it always ends up with the CGI cutscene, so... yeah, pretty swell, if I do say so for myself. And that basically does it for Piglet's birthday. I mean, sure, I might be missing something, but of course, just like in Piglet's Big Game, I'm going to have to do my massive research of where certain things are. So either way though, I'll explain more details about that in a later day. So, with that being said though, yeah, we're basically done Piglet's birthday. So I think we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me tomorrow for more of Let's Play of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly adventure. And that is about the fact that we're about to be experiencing the second birthday, or the second stage if you will. And that's what appears to be none other than Roo's birthday. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Later fellas.